are mobilizing. Hello, everyone. It's working. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Hala Kilani from Climate Action Network. CAN is a global network of 1,500 organizations working in over 130 countries to bring a sustainable solution to the climate crisis. Um, and we have been working with, if not us, then who? Also a global network working to build capacity of indigenous and local communities to tell their own stories about battling for a sustainable future wherever they are and wherever they live. Um, we are we have since last year worked closely through our members, regional and national members, and we have built capacity for people to tell their own stories through film. Uh, the stories about impacts, because we need the support and we need to build power from the bottom up in order for us to have a voice and to have impact on what countries are doing for the climate crisis. As we have been witnessing here in Glasgow over 2 weeks, we have seen that a sort of a betrayal from leaders to actually bring solutions to the climate crisis, and especially to people on the front lines of the climate crisis. The stories you will see in a bit, the stories of people, how they struggle in everyday life with the climate crisis, the losses and damages that they suffer. And these are beyond economic costs, beyond losing houses. It's losing identity, losing a sense of place. It's losing family members. It's losing the capacity to cope with multiple crises. People have dealt with the pandemic. They have dealt with the crisis at the same time, and they are not getting any support. There is no facility, no institution currently in the international process that delivers to people who have suffered from climate change. And these are the people who have done the least to cause the crisis. Most people now on the front lines of the climate crisis are people who are from the global south, who have who live in countries that do not emit the emissions that are causing the crisis. So developing and rich countries have to pay up for the losses and damages. Polluters have to be held accountable for what they have done to those who are now having to deal with it. So the idea of the World We Want campaign, the stories you will see here are part of this campaign. The idea is to, and you will see also the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres speaking about it, is to actually tell the stories and appeal to the emotional level, to people's empathy with those on the front lines of the climate crisis, so that we all gather together in solidarity and we push our governments to act on the climate crisis. It is not acceptable that after decades of inaction, and at the point we are at now, as the science is saying, impacts are happening everywhere in the world. And we officially entered the era of impacts. It is unacceptable that leaders come out with basically nothing, deliver nothing in these negotiations, deliver nothing on the national level in order to support those who are suffering the most from this crisis. So the idea is to get these stories out, to make everyone in the world aware of what is the climate crisis, what do people go through exactly, and to get each and every one of us to act in solidarity, whether at the ballots or any kind of pressure, petitions, street demonstrations, like the youth are doing as well with the climate strikes every Friday. It's really to mobilize and build power from the bottom up in order to not allow leaders to come to COPs. And we are at COP27 now. This is like the 27th. It's called 26, but if you count COP0, we are 27 years of inaction. So it is unacceptable that they come here and they get away with the trade-offs they are doing. They are trading off the future and the present. They are trading off human rights, with carbon markets. They are not serious about the issues. And the G77 and least developing countries, small island states have put on the table this issue of loss and damage facility. And today, the text that has been negotiated has been out without any mention of the facility that was tabled by a bloc of countries that represent 6 billion people. 6 billion people have been ignored. And this is why we need to keep on pushing. We need to keep on talking about the impacts and why a response has to be urgent. People are stranded in tents, and as you will see from these stories, and as you will hear from our speakers today, we have Wellington Madumira representing Zimbabwe, and he will tell us about what's the situation in Zimbabwe. And we have Aldrin Calixte from Haiti, and telling us about the situation of Latin America and the Caribbeans and how they are suffering with the climate crisis. But first, I would like to invite you to see these stories that have been actually sourced at the local level after training of people who are not professional filmmakers, but who want to tell the story of the climate crisis. And we have put them together with the help of professional filmmakers from If Not Us Then Who, with the editing process. So these are really local and authentic footage of people who are on the front lines. So I will invite you to start with that, and then we will follow with a panel discussion with our panelists today about the local impacts and what the kind of effective response, what it would look like. Thank you.
We live in profoundly challenging times. COVID-19 has devastated lives and economies around the world. But it has not stopped the climate crisis. Like a pandemic, global heating is hitting the world's most vulnerable communities hardest. Yet, as is so often the case, those who have done least to cause the crisis are taking the boldest steps to confront it. These stories of urgency and resilience from the front lines of the crisis are essential. They can inspire greater climate ambition around the globe, but only if they are seen. I commend the Climate Action Network for bringing these stories to the world and for giving a greater voice to those who have struggled for too long to be heard. There is much work ahead for the global community to build greater climate justice and resilience as we strive for net zero emissions by 2050. But I remain optimistic. We can achieve the world we want if we work together and leave no person and no nation behind.
huracán Iota, que ha sido para nosotros algo muy fuerte, llegó a impactar nuestras islas el día 13 de noviembre y dejó a la pequeña isla de Providencia de 5.000 habitantes aproximadamente prácticamente sin nada. Toda mi familia y yo hemos quedado sin nuestros hogares. Ya no hay árboles, no hay casas, no hay posibilidad de tomar agua potable. Fue como un shock para nosotros como cultura y también como familia. Estamos en el 2020 sufriendo una de las peores tragedias para nosotros como territorio insular. Entonces, ¿qué están haciendo los del gobierno? ¿Cómo nos vamos a adaptar al cambio climático? ¿Cómo vamos a ayudar a estos territorios, a estos lugares tan vulnerables frente al cambio climático? Hicimos un llamado mediante una tutela al gobierno de Colombia a exigirle que cumpliera el Acuerdo de París, porque sabemos que en Colombia lo que más genera saldos de carbono es la deforestación que ocurre en nuestra Amazonía. Son los territorios más vulnerables, los más pequeños, hay veces los que ni siquiera generamos tanto CO2 o tantos daños al ecosistema y somos los que más sufrimos estas vulneraciones respecto al clima.
My name is Sarah Kixmoller, and I am a public high school teacher. I teach in the Bay Area, but I live in the Santa Cruz Mountains in the town of Felton. And I've been affected a lot by what's been happening with the wildfires. So I had to evacuate my home because of the CZU fire. And inconveniently, on the third day of school, in addition to having to sort of rearrange my life and try to grab whatever belongings I could, I've had to try to figure out how to teach remotely while evacuating. You know, school went on as normal. That was a very hard 10 days that I was evacuated, using my cell phone basically as my hotspot to teach. I think what I've realized over this experience is climate change has become very real for me. And so I honestly never thought that I would see the effects of climate change, but it's something that is happening now, it's ongoing, and I'm a little bit fearful of the future, actually very fearful of the future, to see how it's going to continue to affect not only my life, but how I'm able to provide education for my students. It's just something to think about, you know, looking at California and seeing what's happening to us and realizing it can happen to the rest of the world. Thank you so much for, you know, listening to our stories, and we will continue to try to do our best living in these difficult times.
Угольные компании разрушают реки, разрушают окружающую среду, уничтожают леса и загрязняют атмосферу. В результате люди, живущие в Кузбассе, чаще болеют и раньше умирают. Кузбасс – это главный угледобывающий регион страны. Здесь ведут добычу частные угольные компании с огромным количеством нарушений. Уголь добывается в огромных угольных разрезах рядом с населенными пунктами, городами, а также в их черте. На сегодняшний день около 200 тысяч человек живет в зоне экологического бедствия. И они не могут уехать, потому что их дома никому не нужны, а в другом месте работу они найти не могут. Больше всего страдают коренные народы, потому что им труднее всего поменять место жительства. Правительство покрывает действия угольных компаний, в результате чего те люди, которые выступают против действий угольщиков, подвергаются репрессиям, на них накладываются штрафы. Уголь – главный враг климата. Помимо этого, добыча угля нарушает права человека в Кузбассе. Необходимо немедленно прекратить покупать уголь в Кузбассе и как можно скорее отказаться от ископаемого топлива.
Malaki yung katulad ng pagbaha nang wala sa panahon, pag-ulan nang wala sa panahon, at yung pagbabago-bago ng klima. Kaya nagiging sanhi ng mga sakit ng mga kabataan at ng may mga edad na mahihina ang katawan. Kung umuulan, hindi tayo makapaggawa ng mga gagawin natin sa trabaho, ultimo sa pang-araw-araw na pamumuhay namin, pagpunta ng mga palengke, at lalo na yung sa pagtatrabaho, sobrang init naman. Hindi katulad yung init noon na tatagalan mo, ngayon hindi. Yung sa pakiramdam mo sa katawan mo, masyadong nakaka-dehydrate ng pangangatawan ng tao ngayon. Dapat meron kami mga na-harvest na gulay dahil sa pagbabago ng panahon, pag-ulan ng malakas na wala naman sa panahon, nasisira yung kapaligiran namin. Na itutulong nito yung mabawasan ng mga polusyon sa paligid ng komunidad. Pangalawa, yung polusyon sa katubigan, sa pagtatapon ng mga plastik, mga basura, at ganyan din sa kapaligiran natin para sa kalusugan ng mga mamamayan.
It so happens that floods are received in the district like nearly each and every year. We have the highest rainfall intensity, especially by end of April. The rainfall intensity is so much that when it clocks now May, all the waterways are supersaturated, and eventually we have a flood. And it so happens that this flood comes in a way that it hits for about 6 hours. We call it the flash flood. It hits for about 6 hours, and then after 6 hours, the water again subsides. It again comes after like 2 days to clear now whatever has been left behind.
As we extend fish farm, we lost some fish because the river came and attacked our farm. We lost 6,000 fish and 1,600 kilograms of fish feeds. And now we are actually trying to mitigate. We are trying to look for some measures. We want to install some solar pumps, like drilling the water from underground, and we use solar because we have a natural source of energy, which is sun. If we install some water solar pump, it can help us irrigate our farms, like our fish farm. So we need some kind of help, like some funds to construct the dikes, which can stop the floods from attacking the farm. And then some funds which can help us buy the solar system so that we can get the water from underground and we pump it to our farm.
Thank you so much for watching and listening to those stories. We will now speak about the regions where our panelists are active. And yeah, I will start with you, Aldrin. Would you please introduce yourself and tell us about the experiences in Haiti?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aldrin Calixte. I am from Haiti in the Caribbean region and a small island. First of all, I want to express my thanking to people who are affected by climate issues, and also people who lost their life during this struggle. It's really big struggle, but we just want to let them know that we still continue. We're still keeping the resistance, the mobilization to get a better nature. In my country, Haiti, I'm from the organization named IT Survey, in French, IT Survey. IT Survey is a national organization. We're based in Haiti. We are an environmental organization. We work on many issues, particularly climate issues. Environmental is, we start nationally to global level. We are member of CAN in the region, Latin American and Caribbean. We are also members of Friend of the Earth. And we have many campaigns on climate, on environmental issues, particularly on climate. As you just see in the movie, I think in reality resume the situation of Haiti. When we, all of the years, we can say that we got a drought period who will be longer than before, and we have a rainy season, and during the rainy season, we have flooding issues. But in Haiti, we most 50% of the population living in the rural area. And in the rural area, most of them practice agriculture to get income. And unfortunately, some countries like Haiti or in Africa or in Latin America and in the Central America, we have less capacity, like technology or capacity, like to give responses. Like example, when you say issues in California, it's about issues, but United States sometimes have a capacity to respond. But in some country like Africa or Haiti, where the resources is really low, when we got a climate crisis, the response is most of the time it's really low and take more time than normally, and most of the time people suffering. Like example, in Haiti, we practice raining agriculture. When it's raining, the peasant, the farmers plant the seeds. But any changing we have in this season, they lost their crops. And when they lost their crops, no income, no resources to help their family is a problem for them. That's during the raining season. And during the drought season, they can plant. Another problem. That's the reason now in Haiti, more than 50% of food is imported food. And the year by year, the dependence of imported food increase. Probably it's due some it's climate issues. The other aspect in Haiti is hurricane season. Hurricane season starts in June to November, end of November. And during the hurricane season, what we see is many hurricanes in this during the season. And the last hurricane we got in Haiti, the higher one, is Matthew. And when Matthew was in the south, crossed the south of the country, he devastated all these area. But the main issues I have to mention is resources, national resources. The government put them on the table like a response. And we are like in a circle vicious, like every year we have to bring more resources, like national resources, like to build the capacity of response of, or to build the capacity to build our resilience. We can't. We're supposed to bring it years by years the resources, national resources. And the other aspect is the country, the government supposed to request loan from institutional, financial institutional. And at this moment, we increase the debt of the country. And when you pay, in French we said service de la dette, debt services.
Debt service.
And we don't have resources like to support your country. And and also I take this opportunity to thank all of country. Most of the time when we got a climate shock, who manifest their solidarity with us. I think I take this opportunity to say thank of all people, not only for Haiti, but for all over the world, like we manifest our solidarity. Other impact of climate is water. Water, when doing the drying, water is a circle, like raining and go to underground and up. And when it's not raining, no water on the underground. And they have some problem, mostly in Haiti, mostly for women and child. because they are most responsible to collect water. And also the other problem regarding the water is they have some time between community, like example, community in the to struggle to get access to the water, and that's another problem. And in my region, in the Caribbean region, like in the East area, where income from those countries is totally come from tourism, and when the sea, the level of sea rises, but those countries, small country, territory small, they can't get an income. Most of the time, one of the consequences of these issues is migration. Like example, now in Haiti, we got a lot of migration. Migration because people are affected. People supposed to survive, and they get some option, like most often they go to outside of the country to survive. For us, I think climate in the world, you mentioned it's 26 years before we discuss about. But I can say that next year, in 2022, will be the 50 years when we discuss about environmental situation in Stockholm. But for me, 50 years after, the result is really low. But that, as said, we as organization, we as people, we supposed to be as a police. Like example, when you are in the street, they have no enter. And I can say that the leader of the world now go in the bad direction. Like they go to the tender. Us, as a police, we're supposed to give them a ticket. And our ticket will be the mobilization. As small as it, we can set the difference. When you put your mobilization, I put mine, we put all together, we can make them to change the direction, because we go in the bad direction. And for us, I think we have to continue to say climate justice for people. Us as people, we are in power. And also, I have to show you two. One is about climate justice for all. I'm sorry. It's a climate justice for all. That's one. The other one is about the energy. Today, we have to request the sovereignty of energy. And as a community, as a people, the solution most of the time they bring on the table is a fast solution. Just most of the time they bring something, they bring some mechanism. Today they talk about net zero, and just to cap our mind, to say, oh, well, yeah, that's for us. We have to continue our struggle, because the future is our hand. We must act. And finally, I have to say to the leaders, world leaders, your population, give you a mandate not to pollute our environment. They give you the mandate to protect them. You have to. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aldrin. You raise very important issues. The fact that, you know, I mean, people get pushed out of their homes. People are forced to migrate. And as we saw in the films, sometimes they are pushed to overexploit resources. And the other very important point raised by Aldrin is the fact that we are all affected by the climate crisis, but we are affected differently. I mean, a person who is in a developed country, and we saw, like, for example, Germany and the floods, although they have the capacity to respond, they were late responding. They were late, providing for their people refuge and helping them recover from the impacts. Can you imagine poor countries like Haiti, poor countries like Zimbabwe, poor countries like all those we are watching in these films? They do not have the capacity, they do not have the equipment, and they do not have the finances. And Aldrin spoke about the fact that what happens is the cycle of increased debt for countries who have to finance climate impacts and the loss of development, you know, infrastructure and economic development that happened. It just gets blown by a disaster, by a hurricane, by flooding, flash flooding. And so what you get is that all those investments that went into this infrastructure and this development are blown. And you saw Uganda. There's also, places where hospitals are gone and schools are gone. Can you think about this multiplier effect of these disasters? And these are countries who do not necessarily have the capacity to rebuild and recover as fast as countries of the developed world. So we are all impacted, but there are different degrees of impacts. I now want to have a fast reflection from Wellington. We'll have another chance to speak more, Wellington, but we will have a fast reflection from you. Then we will go into a cycle of other movies from other countries. And just please, two words about the situation in Zimbabwe, and then we go to the films again, and then we can just speak more about, the responses that are needed.
Okay. Thank
Please
you so much.
introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ala. My name is Wellington Madumira. I'm the country coordinator of Climate Action Network Zimbabwe, based in Southern Africa. Coming from a background that Africa, in terms of emission, we emit less than 5% of the total greenhouse gases. So meaning to say, in terms of mitigation, sometimes Africa might say it's not a priority for us. Coming from a country, Zimbabwe, where access to electricity is around 40%, then it's not reliable again. Then from all the deliberation that we have been doing here, I think climate is the weapon of mass destruction. Looking at all these videos, what have been destroyed so far in terms of infrastructure, I think there are a lot of things that have been destroyed, including human life. Then climate change is the cause of natural disasters that we are really experiencing currently. So as of Zimbabwe, I think we are experiencing a number of natural disasters. The one that I can start off is like the cyclone Idai. I decided to just put some statistics on that. I think it happened on March 2019. Then in terms of like the people who were affected, there were around 17,608 people were left homeless without anywhere to stay. and the government has no financial muscle to make sure that everyone managed to access a decent house to live. 12 health facilities were damaged in that area, meaning to say if you are going to be injured during that disaster, where are you going to get that health facility? Where are you going to get some medicines for you to get healed? Water and sanitation and hygiene infrastructure were also destroyed. 139 schools were affected within that province. Then 9,084 learners, considering the primary education and secondary education, were affected by that cyclone. So these are some of the things that are really happening in Zimbabwe. In the previous years, we used not to have like cyclones. That's why even in terms of preparedness, when people were talking to say, we are going to experience cyclone Idai, everyone was like, I don't think it's going to be that impact. But with the current trend that we are experiencing, I think climate change action is now. Then we are also experiencing a number of floods incidents in Zimbabwe, which is also affecting infrastructure. We are also experiencing field fires, drought, storms, and also heat waves. So coming from a background of Zimbabwe, we are more like an agro-based economy. Our economy is based on agriculture. So the moment we talk about drought, it means our economy is going again to fall down. The moment we talk also about issues to do with affecting our education, I just said to take into consideration what happens like in 2017, where there was like a destruction of infrastructure by floods and also by cyclone. 500,000 children were affected in 2017. This caused school dropouts. This will also affect quality of education, will be compromised. This will lead to poor education of our children. Then in 2017 alone, our government managed to pump almost $4.7 million to rehabilitate the schools. But we are talking from a country which has not enough financial muscle again to help its communities, which is emitting a little in causing climate change. So it's something that we are really worried of. Then in terms also of our health sector, I said most probably when we experience these climate-related disasters, the health facilities will be destroyed, for example, with cyclone. And there are also prevalence of new diseases that are really coming in. For example, in Harare, we used not to have malaria. But currently, we are experiencing malaria incidents in some of the provinces that were not like prone to malaria. Then in our agriculture sector, like I said, that our economy is agro-based. We rely mainly on agriculture. The main challenge that we have is like the distribution of rainfall. Sometimes you just get the rainfall that you are supposed to get throughout the whole year in 1 week. Then that's enough. What are you going to grow in a space of 1 week? Then you can safely say, I harvested this. There's nothing that you can do with that. So even in terms of us, like, you know, our agriculture sector, for it to be vibrant, we need also access to energy. But now we have got like the Wange Thermal Power Station, which supplies almost like 80% of our electricity. Then we've got the Kariba Hydro, which supplies the rest of the electricity. But now, due to inadequate water supply, our Kariba cannot power like the whole of Zimbabwe throughout 365 days per year. So it's something that is really a worry to us. Then we cannot talk of development without talking of access to energy. There are some other investors that have decided to say, let's work on decentralized renewable energy system, to say in this province, let's have a small mini hydro that will support that small community. Let's have solar panels or solar farms that will support like a specific community. But all these initiatives are being affected also by climate change. Like for instance, some of these mini hydro, they cannot run throughout the whole year. Why? Because we are not getting enough supply of water to support this mini hydro. So at the end of the day, if that mini hydro, for example, our rain season starts from November to around January, thereabout, most probably all of the mini hydro won't be working like in around April. So it means you have to wait from April again up to the next rain season for you to have access to water that will support that mini hydro. So at the end of the day, the communities won't have like enough capacity, maybe even to value add their agriculture crops if you manage to have access to one. So those are some of the challenges that we are also facing. Then our industry, like I said, we rely on agriculture produce. So the moment we do not have like the agriculture produce, it will also be affecting our industry as well. So at the end of the day, we end up more like exporting most of the materials that will be used in Zimbabwe. Even our mining sector also requires energy. The moment we do not have access to energy, the moment we do not have access to food, all these sectors will really be affected. So these are some of the experiences that we are really experiencing in Zimbabwe. But maybe going forward, we are saying there are a lot that needs to be done, especially agreeing with what my colleague has said, to say there's need to support climate justice now. We don't emit, but we face the impact of climate change. So how can that be addressed? I thank you.
Thank you so much, Wellington. Thank you. I think we should move to the second batch of films. Thank you for being with us and for your patience, and then we will continue talking more about how the challenges that are being faced in certain regions and how we can together get to a world we want. Thank you.
För renskötseln är någonting som är väldigt speciellt. Det har funnits väldigt, väldigt länge. Och det gör också att det finns väldigt, väldigt många gamla traditioner. Det är ett väldigt speciellt levnadssätt. Och i och med att man lever med naturen så är man så beroende av att den funkar. Unga samer, unga renskötare idag tror jag känner väldigt mycket stress på sig. Det kommer från många olika håll, men jag tror att den största rädslan man har, det är över framtiden.
För här uppe, folk där psykiska ohälsan är otroligt stor och den blir bara större och utbredare för renskötare mår dåligt. Så vi behöver ta vårt ansvar, men lika mycket är det EU, andra stora organ, de som har makten i världen idag, de måste ta sitt ansvar.
Miten tepat, ja me tiedätkö tiuna alkualmuka, mä viestoji tappie nuortaan ja arkittalasan, att ni semmi vahtisvuotaa yhtäkö mii. Mä gott aivo vietsä alkualmuka, voin ja taille pere saami tiehti mitä tahkaa. Mitä kato johonkin alkualmukin postiin.
აქ კალაპოტი ბუნებრივია, ქალაქში შევიწროებულია ბუნებრივად, ხელოვნურად და ამიტომ მაშინ როცა ვერ ეწევა ნამატი წყალს არის, იგი გადმოდის და წმორავს ქალაქის საკმაოდ ბევრ რაიონს. ამას ახლა მდგომარეობას უკვე ართულებს ის გლობალური პრობლემები, რაც მსოფლიოს აქვს.
რა სიმაღლეზე ადიძდება და რა იქნება, არ ვიცი. შიში ვარ და მოლოდინში ვარ, იმისა რომ რაიმე არ დაგვემართოს. რა თქმა უნდა, შეიძლება იყოს ასე ჩანდეს ესე ქვები და ყველაფერი და 10 წუთში შეიცვალოს ისე რომ საერთოდ დაფაროს ყველაფერი.
და ამას რა თქმა უნდა გლობალურ პრობლემას, მაგრამ არის პრობლემები, რომელთა აღმოფხვრა ხელისუფლებას შეუძლია და ეს უნდა გააკეთოს. მაგალითად, ქუთაისიდან 20 კილომეტრში შენდება ნამოხვანკეს დიდი კაშხალი, 105 მეტრის სიმაღლის კაშხალი, შენდება სეისმურად არამდგრად რეგიონში და სერიოზული მიწისძვრის პირობებში კაშხალი დაზიანდება და დაინგრევა მთლიანად და გამოთვლილი არის 19 წუთში. ქალაქს დააწყდება თავს 30 მეტრიანით. ეს უკვე არის ეკოლოგიური კატასტროფა, რომელიც მთლიანად გაანადგურებს ქალაქს და დასავლეთ საქართველოს.
We got the call to leave our houses, to evacuate down to the wharf, which is where we stayed for pretty much the next 24 hours and witnessed an apocalypse. The whole sky just went pitch black. It was like the darkest winter night you've ever seen. And then everything just went red. I did find out before I left the wharf that my house had definitely been burnt. And when I came up the road in the car and saw my house, or what was left of it, I just started sobbing. The only things left standing were the Hebel bricks and the steel, and everything else, even the roof had caved in, and there was just nothing I could actually identify out of any of my possessions. I've seen firsthand what climate change can do. I have seen the consequences of the bushfires that destroyed half of Malakuta and our wildlife and all of the things that we know and love there. And that to me sends a very strong message about needing to act now, not waiting, but setting very strong emissions reduction targets that keep us under 1.5 degrees of warming. We've just had a huge wake-up call about what happens when we get to 1 degree of warming, and I can't even imagine what more than that will be like.
I'm in front of the radioactive stacks, and they are discharging water into radioactive water into the bay, and people are out here fishing all the time, not aware of this obviously, and eating all of this, and concerns me with all the storms that are coming up and with how much they're going to be dumping, and nobody seems to know anything about this. In this industry around here, I know that you have to wear a radioactive badge. It's a meter that goes in your pocket, And once you reach that meter to the radiation level that is toxic to your body, they shut you down from working in the industry. You're no longer able to do that. So what about the people who don't have this meter attached to them at all times when you're around this water? If it's radioactive water, we're here all the time, we don't have that. So how much are we taking in?
Thank you. This is, yeah, it's amazing. You see this footage, and these films were really the result of an effort of people who are on the ground, who are living the reality of climate change. And it's amazing that what people can do to tell their own stories. I think it's what Jan, the victim of the bushfires in Australia, said, is we need to make efforts to keep us under 1.5. And you should know that the leaders out there who are now in the negotiation rooms here in Glasgow, represented by their own negotiators, they are not keeping us under 1.5. They are not setting the emission targets. They are not following what they promised in Paris in 2015. They're supposed to review and update their emission targets every 5 years, commit with plans that keep us under 1.5. Until now, we are going to 2 or 3 or more degrees with the plans they have out there. And that means you saw the bushfires, and you haven't even seen like the effects on animals in this footage, but there is a lot of footage where you can see how these bushfires have killed animals as well, who have zero responsibility in terms of this and still having to pay that price. So I would like to ask Wellington, what are the needs in Zimbabwe? What are currently the needs of people? What do they need, those who are affected by the climate crisis?
Yeah, I think there are a number of needs, but maybe the first of all is like we need access to finance. For whatever initiative that you can think of, the main thing that will come into your mind is like finance. Sometimes finance is not like getting to the real people who are really affected by climate change impacts. So they should also have access to that finance for them to be able to adapt to climate change. Then also, even when adaptation mechanisms are coming in place, they should be community driven, not to some extent whereby I'll just bring something from Scotland, then I say, let's implement this in Chisumbanji. Sometimes the community, they won't have like more like a buy-in from their side, but you need something that is really inclusive of the community to really say, we develop this idea together, then how can we work together on that? Then also there's need to have more like technology transfer. There are other technologies that are not like in Zimbabwe. For instance, people are talking of going renewable. In Zimbabwe, there's no any company that manufacture solar panels. There's no company that manufacture batteries locally. There's no company that manufacture electric vehicles. But we have got those minerals like lithium that is available. So we are saying that technology that is being used in developed countries to maybe to manufacture these renewable energy products, can they also be transferred to local communities so that they start to have business component within in trying to adapt it to climate change? Because I've realized that when it comes to like development of policies, a number of donors, they will come in to say, we want to support you to develop this renewable energy policy, we want to support you to develop this national determined contribution document and whatever. But now when it comes to implementation, because all those documents, they are in place in Zimbabwe. But now what is lacking is implementation, where to get financial support that will make sure that the policy, the strategies are implemented. The documents are there, like the policy frameworks, they are there, but what is now lacking is support to those documents. So that's why I highlighted the issues to do with finance, to say what is really needed is like the finance. We can talk of like us experiencing like cyclone. We need early warning systems, vibrant early warning system, to really say, so that you can safely conscientize the community to say, we are going to experience cyclone like this and this and this and this. So that at the end of the day, maybe our communities will start to trust that information that we are giving to them. Because currently, for example, in some provinces, you can have one met service where you are supposed to get like weather report per province. A province might cover, I can't remember which, a number of square kilometers, of which is not like a true representative of the entire region. So we need that information to really scale down to each and every community. Then also there's need to do capacity building of, in Zimbabwe we always say catch them young. This climate change issue should also be taken to primary schools and also secondary schools, so that they start to embrace that knowledge at that tender age. So that even when they grow up, at least it will be easier for them to really understand issues to do with the climate change. Since we are saying it's more like a new phenomenon, but let's catch them young. Then there's also need to incorporate like the science of climate change and also indigenous knowledge system. What our grandmothers really perceive, to say if we are going to have this kind of weather, what does it mean tomorrow? What is going to happen tomorrow? Then you incorporate that with our science of climate change. I think with that, I think we can come up with a concrete solution. Then there's also need to engage like the traditional leaders, the local leaders within the communities, that they can also be part and parcel of this agenda going forward. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Wellington. Yeah, and we saw the film about Sweden and the Sami youth, these young people. I mean, these are the ones, how many of you know of the Disney Elsa film? We all do, right? These are the people who inspire our imagination and our children. And this industry of, everybody knows Elsa and, you know, the Queen of Snow. These are the ones who inspired that film, that Disney film. And these are the people who are disappearing because of climate change. And there are many, many places that will disappear. And I turn to you, Aldrin, because you are from the Caribbean. And you can give us that view of like the situation of how communities will disappear. And what needs to be done now for us to bring that justice you talked about?
Yes. For me, first of all, I think we are in the Caribbean region less responsible of this situation. And this is the big injustice the humanity is facing now. I think the most important is let's continue mobilize together to bring the flag higher than higher, like to denounce this injustice we are facing and request reparation. I think that's the most important, because we supposed to continue the mobilization to denounce these issues, these injustices we are facing. Is first thing. The other things, it's about bring a real solution for community to adapt. Most of the time, they talk about technology, transfer technology, but sometimes it's not really adapted to the situation we are living in a small community. That's the reason I think the community have a lot of experience, like to bring response, give them the opportunity, like to bring the issues. Like example, in agriculture, they have some experiences, like to adapt on this situation. Only missing is resources. Bring the resources in the table and involve local community, local experiences, and to the real solution. I think it's really important. And also, the commitment we took during the last 70 years or 50, 99, 49 years, like, we have to respect our commitment. Like example, we said we bring full funding to adaptation. The funding should be available to adapt on this situation. In Haiti, like example, we said that we have to adapt on hurricane issues, but unfortunately, the resources is not available, like to people to build better. But I think we have, it's not, I think, humanitarian issues, like you bring after a disaster, you bring, no. You have to take, when I said you, the world leaders, the people, the country are most responsible of the situation. You have to repair the situation you are putting now in our climate. And like example, when I said involve the community, if we talk about energy, my friend talk about solar. Why in local community we don't have a company like where people, community can involve, do some industry, like to produce. One, they resolve energy problem. They resolve unemployment, and they get some resources, and they can build their resilience to address the problem of climate, to adapt. And finally, I think one of the issues I want to say, it's we have to change our model of consumption, who are responsible of the situation. As small as it, we can make the difference. And I also at the end send a message to the world leader. They have the responsibility. They can do something. They have to do it. Thanks.
Thank you, Aldrin. I think the issues that Aldrin raised also are very important. These commitments that these countries have done since Copenhagen, since the COP in Copenhagen, where Obama talked about the 100 billion, right? Every year, 100 billion to help the poorer countries, just like Aldrin mentioned, to get the people, to get that adaptation, to get them to transition to renewable energy, to real solutions, not false solutions like carbon capture and storage, like the stuff that are now on the table. And the biggest delegation that was at this COP is the fossil fuel industry, and this is unacceptable. This is unacceptable, and we should all, as Aldrin says, we should all mobilize, we should all speak up, we should all express our dissatisfaction with these lawyers. They are betraying us, they are betraying our present and the future. I think somebody said it from the poorer countries in one of the, they are signing off the future of their grandchildren. This is what Biden is doing, right? Doesn't he have grandchildren? What are we offering these grandchildren? What kind of world are we offering them? So adaptation, and 50% of that public finance that we are demanding should go to adaptation. These negotiations are dominated and are blocked by the rich countries, the US, the UK, Australia, the EU. They are blocking these critical issues that poorer countries are suffering them from. They're blocking adaptations. They talk about mitigation because it's what they want the focus to be on, and that erases the picture we're trying to show with these films on the situation of people who need to adapt, who need to bring their own solutions on how they are strong and resilient against this crisis which they have not caused. And that is completely out of the picture in these negotiations. There's no reflection of that. And that's our demands as coordinators of civil society in this space, is the global goal for adaptation. Loss and damage finance is extremely important. It is too late now. It's not too late to do for the climate to resolve the climate crisis, but it is too late not to talk about the impacts and what they are doing now. We have to do something to the people who are suffering now, and they will continue to suffer. It's too late to just park that and focus on, carbon markets and stuff like that. We need to talk about this issue. We need an outcome at this COP about commitment to financing those who are suffering now. These decades of inaction, which you are exposing with these films, and we should continue to expose in more films, in more visuals, in more communications about the climate crisis. These are decades of inaction that have driven people to a situation where they are losing. They're losing now, and they will continue losing lives, homes, crops, livelihoods, and poorer countries are getting indebted, whereas the climate debt is for rich countries to pay. Let's see the other batch of films and just continue on this loss and damage finance ask from Aldrin and Wellington, who are represent their regions and how they can they are playing part also in these negotiations, and they are part of this ask as CAN members. Thank you. Thank you.
Mvura yakatuka yaguma nousiku. Mwanarume waigogoma gogoma ichikwira paanoziwa muti wetogogoma ichiendawo kushina mvura. Waizokwanisa kutora chimwana kako chisungira mudenga, chimweni kako chikwanda kumusana, amweni aitombwerera nokumwa mvuremo.
Ntansoki mkunangu no mkazi wake wazokushira mudenga. takabuda kunja ngotosambira mimi ndobuda mombe kumtundu takaso twenda kutsaka gwekweta takaenda kutsaka katwa gwete lyani kakuvya nalo diantho singwa nani takatsaka kuda kumula sikumuka takaso singwa chideko singwa fumi bali mudenga basa kwata mutho topona mabomo lyanga chito elera tohankuma ngato nyora ndo chitochenga.
Contra esse ano, vinhas, mas não é assim. Agora este ano, pior mesmo. Quando chega a destruir casas, chover, levar todas as roupas, molhar comida, você ficar sem nada. Está a ver? Mas quando já está a começar a sua vida assim, não há como.
Atitona chatinacho parato mapana zvese atitona kutogonda ngo kundopuwa kuti hai munhu ndi munhu hapana chatinacho.
En el caso mío, yo vivo a la orilla de un cauce que rebalsó su caudal y todo el agua que salía de allí, pues se metió a nuestras viviendas. Tenemos los cuartos inundados de agua. Decidimos autoevacuarnos por medidas de seguridad. Hubieron también los derrumbes de varios cerros, las crecidas de los ríos, pues se rebalsó su caudal. No vamos a tener cultivos, el precio del frijol y el maíz va a aumentar. Nos va a costar mucho sobrellevar esto, pues porque fue algo que afectó bastante en poco tiempo, pero sí afectó mucho. En el caso de nosotros, pues las autoridades municipales vinieron súper tarde y nosotras ya habíamos tomado la decisión pues de salirnos a un lugar más seguro. Nos duele mucho, pero igual seguimos de frente. Vamos a continuar nosotros luchando con lo poco que tengamos para poder sobrellevar esta situación del huracán Iota.
Наш город славится своими солеными озерами, и я сейчас стою напротив одного из них. Эти озера обладают целебными свойствами, и каждый год множество людей из разных стран приезжает к нам для лечения и оздоровления. Но последние годы, а особенно 2020, стали для нас очень тревожными, потому как мы наблюдаем резкое снижение количества воды в наших озерах. Потому что последние годы у нас очень снизился уровень осадков и была достаточно теплая зима. Если так продолжится и дальше, мы просто потеряем наши озера, и множество людей потеряют возможность для лечения, оздоровления и отдыха. конечно, это связано с изменениями климата. Нам всем вместе нужно осознать эту проблему и стараться построить свою жизнь таким образом, чтобы уменьшить выбросы СО2.
ارماش خشلاق سوید نیست ماش مجبور جز خد خروقات پیزن درخت ماش نزدیکان نریچ ماش مجبور لپس وردور پس جوسا جوز چگه و قریب روز ماش وقت انجفت اما ماش وقت خاله نرست ماشا نسویتت نگاز دوان ماش مجبورم طبیعت اطراف خود استفاده کنم ات من اوستا واد مسف تیار بیسید جوز بینرید بیسویتت ماشا پیش رو نیست خوجینگالم فوق تیار شد ماش سوید در کار دیگر تکنولوژی استیصال برق ماش در کار دماش خود طبیعت لک محافظت کنه تا از نو برقرار کنه پماش خشلاق توریست خیلی دن واد اماش زندگی وینن خاله پت ایران سن سر ماش زندگی کنن حتی وز خویش کنم یه وقت امکانیت سعود وزمس هرنگ ده توریست در دیجو دیگر سام سفر کنم
Thanks for bearing with us. There's just a few more films and we will finish with the session. But we wanted, we will also have, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions. And the last issues we want to talk about is this issue that is now on the table, which is the loss and damage finance facility that was brought about by the G77. So these are countries that represent 6 million people and they want this to be part of the outcome of this meeting here in Glasgow, which would make worthwhile all these emissions that were spent on all these thousands of people who came to town to discuss the climate crisis. So why is it important? I'll start with you, Aldrin, then with you, Wellington.
Loss and damage, it's real important things to put on the table because it is a way to repair a situation people are facing. Like example, when you, as you can see in the film, people lost all issues. Lost, like example, most of the time, in 1915, when Matthew crossed the south of the country, and now we are in 2021, some people still don't recover their life. They still have a lot of things to manage. For me, it's really important. It is the way like to help the country, like to support the person affected. And also, this is the way where the developed country, the polluter recognize their fault. It's really important, and also this is we can get more resources to address some issues at national level. Like example, most of country who are affected or who have a lot of loss and damage because they didn't get capacity like to address a crisis. As you can see, like example, in some country, when we have flooding, probably the next year they will put something. They will fix the issues like to block to not the situation next year in those areas. But in the poorest country, like this year, we are facing on the crisis, on the flooding, but you don't have any resources like to bring responses for recovery of the person. That's one. The other aspect, you don't have resources like at local, at governmental level to make action like to protect your community. I think when we put those loss and damage in the table, and we recognize that we have to bring resources like fund for most affected community, but we have resources like not only to make punctual response, but to build the resilience of the country to protect your community or your population.
Thank you, Aldon. Wellington, why do you think it's important from your perspective?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think it's really important. I do agree with what my brother has just said, but maybe to just go back, when we are talking of us experiencing these climate change impacts, we are saying the previous generation failed us. That's why we are experiencing this. But remember, we are also the previous generation of the next generation. So whatever we decide today is also has got some repercussion to the next generation. So on loss and damage, I think the developed world has to compensate us in terms of monetary value, technology transfer, whatever it might be, so that at least we build the resilience of our communities. You know, the developing countries, let's say we removed climate change, they are failing to develop. So it's like you, let's say you are already in a problem, then another problem is coming in. Look at what happened. We are talking of climate change, but we have been experiencing the COVID-19 pandemic that was happening. So we were already in another problem, then another problem comes in again. So that's the same with the developing countries. So we are saying that's the only way we can resuscitate our economy. We are saying we do not have access to, I'm not sure about Scotland, how is your access rate look like? But for Zimbabwe, it's like 40% of people. So every time you count 10 people, 6 of them, they do not have access to electricity. Of which those that have got 40% access to electricity, it's not reliable. Access, we are looking at connectivity to the main grid, not really the actual use of energy, but we are just saying your house is connected to the main grid. So looking at, coming from that background, then again we are now experiencing these cyclones, and the government is supposed again to pump, I said around 4.7 million to make sure that you evacuate the community, but that's not enough again. The people are yet to get like decent houses since 2019. They are yet to get decent food on the table every day since 2019. We are looking at those that were impacted by climate change. But what about all others that were not impacted by climate change, but they are still living in poverty? They are also looking again to the government to say, can you address this problem? Can you address the agriculture sector? But now their focus will be like on the pandemic and also those who were impacted by climate change or by cyclone. So at the end of the day, we realize that the loss and damage is there now to address issues of development of developing countries, so that at least we develop as we move forward. Because, for instance, we cannot talk of like phasing out coal, especially from the developing countries. Because the moment you say, let's phase out coal today, the whole country will be in total darkness, which is really a worry. So we are saying, in terms of loss and damage, if you get that finance, we can also start to support other renewable energy initiatives so that we have good access to electricity. Even in the agriculture sector, we can also start to have irrigation systems that are powered by solar, that are powered even by electricity. But for now, to have that irrigation system that is powered by energy from the main grid, it's not a plus. Why? Because you are not connected 24/7. Maybe in 24 hours you get access to electricity for about 3 hours. Then you are confirmed to have access to electricity. So all those developmental sectors, they need to be addressed going forward. So the moment they address loss and damage, which is like more like a topical issue in this scope, I think developing countries can also have access to finance. Yeah, Ala was also talking about climate finance. In the past, it used to be like 75% was allocated towards climate mitigation and 25% was allocated towards climate adaptation. But of the 100 billion that was committed, how much was getting to the developing countries? Just a few. Then most of the developing countries, their priorities on adaptation than mitigation. But now that climate finance is now targeting mitigation than adaptation. So we are now saying, let's have 50-50, so that at least developing countries can have access to climate finance. Because I remember yesterday we were talking under the arm of Africa, when we were saying, I think Africa has got the capacity of absorbing all the emissions within Africa. To say, Zimbabwe, are you able to absorb your carbon emission that you do like every year? Do you have enough forest to absorb that carbon? Then everyone was like, yeah, we have got that capacity. So what it means, we are also absorbing carbon dioxide that is being a greenhouse gas emission that are emitted from developing countries. So in support of that, can you also give us some finance on loss and damage that we are experiencing as developing countries? That's all that we are really asking for. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes. This is absolutely the message. It is not charity. It is reparations. It is money owed, and it's not coming. This is the first time in 27 years, a country that has committed only a leader, that committed £2 million for the first time to the Climate Justice Fund for Loss and Damage. And it was the First Minister of Scotland. She is not a party in the negotiations, and she is the one who committed £2 million, which is, as you can see from these films, this is just, we showed you just 17 films of 35 films we produced. It is not enough. It is nothing, but it was a symbolic gesture to show that actually never, ever a leader has come out, a country has come out and stood up to what they are responsible for and paid for the losses and damages caused by climate change, caused by the high emitting countries, which till today they block advance on some of the crunch issues that would lead us to a safe future and the world we want. So I will stop here and let you watch the last few films, and then we can also have some questions and answers with you to exchange. Thank you.
Allerdings ist das so, dass das früher alle 5 bis 10 Jahre gemacht wurde. Mittlerweile ist es so weit, dass das jährlich gemacht werden muss. Fragt man sich natürlich, wie lange das auch noch ausreichend ist. Ich bin Lüke Rechtenwald. Ich wohne auf der Nordseeinsel Langeoog. Ich bin 18 Jahre alt und lebe in 3. Generation auf der Insel. Ja, also wir haben ein Bio-Restaurant und ein Bio-Hotel auf der Insel, wo wir uns auch sehr für Nachhaltigkeit einsetzen. Hotel liegt quasi hinter der ersten Dünenreihung und unser Restaurant ist direkt auf den Dünen. Dadurch, sage ich mal, sind wir natürlich durch den Klimawandel auch direkt betroffen und den steigenden Meeresspiegel, da unsere Gastronomie, sage ich mal, an vorderster Front liegt. Also ich bin zusammen mit meiner Familie in einer Klage mit drin, in dem People's Climate Case, die quasi gegen diese unzureichenden Maßnahmen der Regierung gegen anklagen. Und ich bin mit weiteren Jugendlichen aus ganz Deutschland bin ich in einer Klage drin, die dem Bundesverfassungsgericht vorgelegt wurde. Also wir sind halt in dieser Klage drin, weil es einfach um unsere Zukunft gibt. Die Leute, die das heute entscheiden, die werden in 50 Jahren vermutlich, sage ich mal, im Ernstfall nicht mehr leben und das nicht mehr so mitbekommen wie wir oder auch unsere Kinder. Und deswegen geht es dann ganz klar darum, dass Deutschland und auch Europa heute und in Zukunft anfängt, die Emissionen einzuschränken und runterzufahren, um unsere Zukunft zu sichern.
កសិករ95%បាទ95%ធ្វើស្រែយើងធ្វើតាមទំនៀមទម្លាប់ដល់មកបច្ចុប្បន្ននេះគឺសហគមន៍យើងបានកែប្រែទី1ការកែប្រែអាកាសធាតុមកបច្ចុប្បន្ននេះគឺហើយក្នុងមួយឆ្នាំគាត់ព្រោះ2 ដងដោយដំឡើងនិងសម្រកបាទហើយកតានេះគឺយើងធ្វើហើយទីដែលយើងចំណេញទី1គឺកសិករពីដើមគាត់ធ្វើអត់ដែរហូបគ្រប់ទេម្ដងហ្នឹងគឺយើងព្រោះចោលពេលដែលទឹកឡើងមកជួនលិចបាទហើយជួនសល់ពីលិចហ្នឹងគឺសត្វល្អិតសហគមន៍និងប្រជាពលរដ្ឋយើងនេះគាត់ប្រែពីព្រោះស្រូវរដូវមកជាស្រូវប្រាំងវិញហើយឥឡូវបច្ចេកទេសដូចខ្ញុំបាននិយាយមានស្រុកមានអង្គការដៃគូក៏ដូចជាខេត្តអីគ្រប់គ្រងសកម្មភាពហ្នឹងនៅក្នុងមួយឆ្នាំយើងមានតែជីវភាពមានតែការកើនឡើងនៅខ្វះដោយនៅក្នុងសហគមន៍យើងនេះនៅខ្វះតឡសម្ងួតនៅខ្វះអីហ្នឹងសម្រាប់សម្ងួតពូជជូនកសិករក្នុងសហគមន៍ណា
El parque y toda la comunidad en sí en lo que se ha afectado es en la pérdida de línea costera. Hoy día, cada vez que hay un evento donde el mar se pone muy alto y empieza a lavar, se lleva un pedacito. Otra cosa que ha afectado mucho es en los arrecifes coralinos, ¿verdad? Que cuando está demasiado caliente empieza a blanquear. Las especies se empiezan a mover. Todavía hay pescadores en la zona, a veces sufren por eso, porque a veces ellos salen a pescar y ahí no agarran nada, ¿verdad? Sí creo que los gobiernos deberían de ponerse la mano en el corazón y pensar de que Cahuita es una comunidad comprometida con todo, ¿verdad? Comprometida con la naturaleza. Tal vez ya ahora el daño está hecho y el daño es muy grande, pero se puede ir tal vez mitigando.
Соответственно, чем больше горит, тем быстрее меняется климат. Чем быстрее меняется климат, тем хуже условия, в которых горит. В менее освоенных лесах, то есть фактически пожары конкурируют с людьми за древесину. То, конечно, это такое вот прямое человеческое воздействие на ухудшение экологической среды, нашей окружающей среды. И, конечно, есть связь с климатом. Но эти пожары стали возможны в тех регионах, где раньше их не было. Меняются, они уже поменялись, у нас уже выросла продолжительность пожароопасного сезона, у нас уже выросла интенсивность засух, ураганов, соответственно, интенсивность пожаров, которые в этих условиях возникают. Поэтому получается, что борьба с пожарами – это прямая борьба с изменениями климата. Для того, чтобы повлиять на ситуацию с пожарами, конечно, в первую очередь надо повлиять на поведение людей. То есть, да, вот новая климатическая реальность, она требует от нас гораздо более аккуратного обращения с огнем и отказа от вот этих устаревших средневековых в основном практик ведения сельского и лесного хозяйства.
Thank you so much. So I think in conclusion, it really shows that what we see in the films, what the science tells us, and recently there was this IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report that says that, you know, regional climate impacts will be felt more intensely, and it's all over the world. And we have regional evidence of it, of attribution of these disasters to climate change. And to what our panelists said, you know, you can see that women and children are disproportionately affected by climate change. And you can see, as we spoke about climate finance, that there are local solutions, and people want to diversify crops, they want to build their resilience, but for that there's a need for finance, and this needs to come from the countries that caused this crisis. And yeah, we can generally see the inaction from governments, and this is the result of it. So over to you if you have questions. For the Zoom, I think it's important. Yeah, we're on Zoom.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you everyone for sharing, and thank you for all the people involved behind the stories. My question is, how do you see the role of modern colonialism and racism? Like, how is that showing in terms of how reticent the global north is to give all these resources or give all these finances? Like, do you think that racism and colonialism plays a role in that?
Thank you for your questions. Who would like to answer? Yeah, just keep it in case you need to pass it.
Yes, I think the colonialism play a big role on the situation we are facing now. Like example, at the beginning, if I take the case of Haiti, when Haiti was independent in 1804, at the beginning of the country, they start with debt. Like example, France requests a payment, but you can imagine you just starting as a country, and you give all your resources you have. And when they was colonize you, they keep all resources. I think in Africa, in all country in America, I think it's one of the aspects. This, for me, it's really important now. They repair this, the debt. I think it's one issues we have to continue to request, like the reparation on the situation of colonialism, because they took all the resources the country have. I think it's for me it's important, and also recognize the natural debt they have on in front of those countries.
Thank you, Aldrin. Wellington, do you have a reaction to that?
Yeah, I do agree with what he is saying. Because like currently we are talking of climate finance. It doesn't mean that all developing countries, we do not have equal in access of financial resources, of climate finance. Sometimes my neighbor South Africa might be getting like climate finance, but Zimbabwe is not getting that climate finance. But so it's something that is really happening. To say Kenya and Zimbabwe, you cannot compare the two countries. There is one country that is getting more access to climate finance, so that even their adaptation is also better than Zimbabwe. Even their resilience in terms of their communities is also better than Zimbabwe. So at the end of the day, even our economy-wise, you realize that if your economy is like you are at least a developed country and a little bit developed country, you are towards a developed country, sometimes in terms of you accessing the finances, you are in a better position. Then also your relation with the developed country also matters most. If your country is something else, most probably you also get something else, which is something that is really happening, especially to most developed countries. This will get me back to the speech that was made by our president, who was also here. His speech was centered on sanctions. To say sometimes we are failing to get access to climate finance because of the sanctions that are posed to Zimbabwe. Something that I cannot answer, especially on issues to do with the sanctions, because they have some political connotation. But you are saying we are failing to get access to this climate finance because of the sanctions that are there. So even if you say all developing countries should have access to finance, I remember in one of the fora, not climate related, land related forum. I was supposed to get a flash disk, but because I'm coming from Zimbabwe, someone said, no, if you are from Zimbabwe, I cannot give you the flash. And I was like, why? But I'm also a CSO. So there are some other issues that really play in place of this discussion that we are also currently doing. So in terms of even accessing the finances, some of the developing countries might be together to say, let's have access to climate finance and the like, but they are getting some out of the climate finance pocket. Thank you.
Yeah, indeed. I think the issues of racism and colonization are very present in the climate space, and the fact that there's inaction is a sign of dehumanization of those who are on the front lines of this crisis. And these are mostly, Black, indigenous people, indigenous communities, poor, vulnerable communities in the developing world. So there is a dehumanization when we do not act to bring that justice and those reparations to them, or even to protect them from the start from climate impacts, which means doubling up on the mitigation emissions reduction targets, transitioning in a just manner to renewable energy, phasing out coal and oil and gas, getting away from false solutions. The fact that countries are not doing that means that the only message that the people in the developing world get is that they don't care about their lives and their future. And that is, if that's not structural racism, and I don't know what is. Does anyone have another question? Yeah, please do.
Thank you. And yeah, thank you very much for this afternoon. I think just building on your last point there about how we get people to care and how do we change hearts and minds about loss and damage. I'm from the UK, and I've been in Glasgow. I've been very privileged to be here and be part of this conversation, but my friends back home won't have ever heard of that term, or ever push their politicians for these reparations. So the Nicola Sturgeon announcement, I'm also kind of torn about it. I think it's highly symbolic, but at the same time, £1 million, that's a joke compared to what we need to achieve. So how do we do that? How do we get people to really genuinely care about reparations? Is it a legal question and it'll end up in the courts, or can we get everybody to really care and be like, yeah, we need to support this, and it's not aid, it's reparations?
Thanks so much for this question. It's really important. I will just give a quick reaction because it's the panelists who will respond properly to the question. But because we started this initiative of films exactly for that purpose, we need to raise awareness. And I think Adrian mentioned that each and every one of us can do something. So as you saw in the film, there are a few people who are doing cases, like doing proper, litigation cases against governments. And I think in Portugal, the youth won a case against the government. I think this people climate case is quite important to join and to make sure that the EU and the UK and these countries are held accountable. If it can be initiated somehow in any way by the people, it is really people power that we bank on when we are, there's no other way. We as civil society have been part of the process for a long time, and we have been pushing. But it's not enough to come at the end of the year, each year, to COPs and to talk and to push and to do demonstrations. This has to be a consistent push and a consistent push from everyone and everywhere. I think like screenings such as these are quite important. I would have loved to have more people in the room to actually listen to these stories, to hear about them, and to discuss these issues, to unpack these issues. We're so used to, I think, speaking about them in a space where we're in a bubble, the climate bubble. And so sometimes we say words that are probably not, that have no meaning to our neighbors, to our grandmothers, to our friends. And this needs to change. This language needs to be unpacked, democratized, and we need your help as well to help to do that, because we are often speaking to each other, like singing to the choir, and we need to kind of change that and to get more people, change hearts and minds, and get more people converted to this, because it's important. And though we don't probably realize it, but it's everywhere around us, climate change. I mean, I've been to Scotland a few years ago. I've never seen such warm weather before like I've seen now. So it's everyone is feeling it, will feel it increasingly so. So it's important that we all are mobilized, and that kind of awareness needs to be done for people to mobilize. Otherwise, why would they act? But I think each and every one of us can do something. Cases, more awareness, and talking about these stories, sharing them, and also, doing events such as these, discussing, opening it to the public, basically. And Graham, if there are any questions on Zoom, we're happy to take them as well. Okay. Aldrin Wellington, would you like to answer those questions?
I think the view I can, as an example, I said, you have a tree. Comment on dit branche?
You have branches.
Okay, branches. We are all in the branches, and someone or some people, I said the polluter, take and try to cut the branches. And if we give them the opportunity, the possibility to continue to cut, we are all
falling down.
Yes. And that's the reason I said we are all concerned by this situation. We have to continue the mobilization. Keep the flag of mobilization really high. I think it's really important. As small is it, the action you can put on the table, put it. Probably it can make a difference. And also, I think, give more people in the global south the opportunity, like, to bring their voice. On like example, the situation now in the COP26, I think we have mobilization. Yes, we have, but unfortunately, the global south was less.
It was excluded.
Excluded on the
table.
On the table, I think we have to do effort, like to bring more people involved on the table to denounce the situation, and also support our campaign. And each one you support the campaign, probably we move forward on the denunciation of the situation we are facing. And we have to continue to they denounce the injustice we are facing now, and I think more people we are involved. I am really happy, and also doing this, I saw that they have a lot of young people involved on the situation, and I think normally the future will be better. And let's continue working together. Let's continue take hand by hand, like to demystify the propaganda of false solution they propose.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I think that, this issue of access and exclusion, I mean, we as CAN have asked the UK government to postpone the COP, because the injustice also starts from the fact that, is the world vaccinated the same? How many people are vaccinated in the global south, and how many are vaccinated to the global north? What did they do? They had the G7, where we also demanded that they decide to take down the vaccine, the vaccine, what do you call it, when you have the monopoly of the vaccine, and you don't give waivers for countries to do their own vaccines. You don't share, they don't get the ability to do their own vaccines in order for us all to be equally vaccinated. It's not fair. So many people were not able to come from the global south to this COP because of vaccine inequity, because of vaccine apartheid. And then the exorbitant costs that were laid down in front of people for coming to this COP. You had to, there were red lists of countries, then they took them off after pressure, but there were red lists, and if you are from a red list country, you're supposed to quarantine 10 days, and that adds 10 days for your accommodation costs. 10 days costs across the board. And it's not okay, because people in the global south, they do not earn in pounds. They do not, it's extremely costly for them to come here already in the first place. And then you add to it more costs with quarantines and what have you. And so they were not able really to offer a safe COP completely, yet they insisted on a physical and COP. And they took as an excuse that climate action cannot wait. However, we have not seen that climate action yet. The outcome that is now being finalized, the text, the cover text, is very weak. And it's been the case almost in every COP. And this is why we are at COP27, 28, 29. And yeah, next year it's the Africa COP. So I hope the African civil society have something to offer Wellington in terms of getting the voices of the global south heard more. Right? I mean, if you can answer also the question.
Yeah, maybe if I can start by answering the question. What we are expecting under loss and damage is more like commitment from the developed countries. Like what they've done, like to the climate finance, say we are going to give you 100 billion per year from 2020 up to 2025, even though that commitment was not fulfilled. But under loss and damage, we are saying these are the impacts that we are feeling at the ground. Can you support us? Can you support financially under loss and damage? So what we need from the developed countries, like the commitment to say we are going to support you. Then they have to sign. Then we will start again to do monitoring and evaluation. Are you fulfilling that commitment? So that's the whole idea that we want under loss and damage. To say, how much are you committed? Are you committing to do? To pump towards the loss and damage, so that at least the developing countries can have easy access to that finance. if you come across any disaster that can happen in your country, then you can have access to that finance, then you start to use that finance in your respective countries. So that commitment is what is currently lacking from the outcome that we are getting from COP26. So we're anticipating maybe there is going to be a change of some sort, but provided there won't be a change, this COP, from civil society perspective, will be like, it was more like a failure because our topical issue was not fully addressed. That's the why. So maybe going to COP in Africa, it's fortunate it's North Africa.
Egypt is Africa.
Yeah, so it's North Africa. So most probably we hope maybe, because all of these issues that are still pending from this COP, they are being said we are going to address that during COP27. So we hope maybe COP27 is going to address those issues under loss and damage, the ambition issues. You know, developing countries, we are eager to really sign each and every document. For example, when they say we want to have like a 1.5 degree Celsius target, we develop the NDC, the National Determined Contribution, is there in place. We develop the strategy and everything. But what we are lacking is like now to get the financial muscle to implement that. So we are now saying, in terms of loss and damage, can they really address also the issue of finance so that at least we can be able to adapt and even to support our communities in terms of the damage that they are going to face. Someone was even asking me to say, how much money are you going to allocate to the loss of life? Yeah, we are saying loss and damage, but how much is a human being financially? How much do I cost in terms of monetary value? So at the end of the day, most probably the loss and damage is like, it's like just a teaspoon you are trying to put in a dam, something like that. So you're just requesting a little amount of money so that at least we can work with our communities. So that's not much. Then, so most of the issues are being pushed forward to COP27, which we hope, since most of the impacts they are also happening in developing countries, maybe we are going to get something out of it. But I remember even COP that was held in South Africa, which is our neighbor, there's not much that was really agreed during that COP. So still, this is the 27th year of negotiating about climate change, where we are saying, can you support us? So it's more like you are still piling a number of years, negotiating each and every year and the like. But we hope maybe if this COP failed, most probably COP27 is also going to give us something. Thank you.
Thank you, Wellington. Are there any questions from our Zoom colleagues? No. Any other questions? Great, thank you so much. I think to wrap up, yes, this issue of these COPs, this space, there's a lot of buzz around it, but it's not getting us to where we need to be. So I think the points that were made today about pushing and mobilizing from the national level, like people in the UK pressure the UK, people in the US pressure the US. But that knowledge, this knowledge about loss and damage, about impacts, you've seen how many countries in the world are covered by this. So, yeah, I mean, we need everyone to join, everyone to push, to have ideas, to campaign, to whatever is possible to do on the individual level. Because, I mean, the science tells us that it's possible. We have a very small time bracket to work, but we have to do our best to get things moving in those less than a decade, probably, for us to keep 1.5. Yes, please. It's okay. It's just for Zoom.
I totally agree that we need to mobilize all the society, and then we have seen how the youth of the world has started to mobilize, not only with Greta, but all these young leaders that are in the in the 5 continents and coming from indigenous communities and of all the races and so on, and they are also mobilizing young people. And then we have this new movement that is Extinction Rebellion, and they are also mobilizing new groups of people. And I come from the activism, environmental activism, and we've been doing actions for many, many years. And I think it is so important that we all come together. Of course it is. But what I see is that it is not enough at all that the civil society mobilized, because it is what we are facing is our extinction. We are facing the extinctions of millions of other living beings that, you know, they are going to die because human activities. And what about the activity, you know, the mobilizing of the politicians, because they work for the corporations. They have their hands cuffed because of the corporations and the corporative world and economy. And this is something that we have to change as humans, you know. So for me, I think that it is not enough. We all know that climate change is happening, and it is, you know, the global south, the small Pacific islands and Caribbean islands are the ones that are at the front. But we are all, because we have only one home, and it is our common home. So climate change is happening everywhere, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And in fact, it's going to affect the whole humanity. So I think it is time that politicians stop saying blah, 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 and stop talking, and they start really doing actions themselves, you know, like, because every part of society, we have a role to play here. And if you are a student, you have a role. And if you are a doctor, you have a role because you are taking care of ill people. But if you are a politician and if you are economists, you have also a role. Scientists have their own role, and they have been telling us for so many years what was going to come and what is happening. And politicians were just, you know, looking at the other way. But it is not time. I mean, what about the politicians? Why don't politicians become activists? You know, I was in a meeting of leaders of South Pacific Islands just before Paris COP, yeah, and it was the first time the term climate justice was introduced in the conversation. And we are now in 6 years afterwards. And yeah, we talk about climate justice, but nothing has happened. So what I would like to see is that not only people from the Western society as the leaders to be real leaders and do what they have to do. I am also asking the leaders of the Global South becoming activists, you know, like doing real actions and to force the politicians from the rich countries to change, because we need to change the system. And all the money, this, you know, the corporative fossil world being with 500 delegates at the COP, you know, like, this is not acceptable. But it is not acceptable for any one of us, even the politicians. And what I cannot understand is why, if it's only a bunch of, you know, little number of rich countries, the ones that have these corporations and the ones have, you know, causing the problem, how the rest of the governments, they don't come together and say enough is enough, and let's change the rules, because we are many more of these ones. So I think that we really need to change this in the political arena too. We need to change the rules. It's not about, yeah, we listen, we hope that things will come, and nothing happens.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think you make a very good point about these politicians who are in the room, who are holding our future in their hands. Who do they represent? And that's why today our press release as CAN, in reaction to these negotiations, we say betrayal. There's betrayal. Because many of the times, are the countries speaking on our behalf or not? Do they really represent us or not? That goes for developing and developed countries. Because what you see in these films is this is authentic stories of people, authentic things happening. Is the picture being transmitted by the Global South representatives and the negotiating tables enough? This pressure should be on from the beginning. Loss and damage should be on the table from the beginning. It wasn't even on the agenda. And that is shocking and should be exposed. From the developing country world, do these representatives actually represent the people who want change, who want system change, who want actually to be also secured and safe from climate impacts, because it's happening everywhere, even if there are resources or better preparation, but still we need to protect people from the start, not wait until disasters happen and then respond. And then there are countries, and you've seen here a few countries, where you have no democracy at all, where activists go to jail because they're saying what they're saying. Russia and these places. And Russia and all these countries, China, they're also not helping, move things forward. But what's worse is that people don't have a voice at all there. Activists don't have a voice at all there. They could be put in jail for simply talking. They don't have Twitter. They don't have Facebook. They don't have the tools that some other countries have. So in those countries where we have the tools, we should be more active, and we should be appreciative of, at least happy that we can do something a bit more than others who have to go to jail to say something about the issue. Many of our activists in these countries have been imprisoned, have been tortured for saying what they are saying. And they're just demanding what is legitimate and what is just. I'll give a final word to our panelists, and then we can close.
Okay, I think my final words to this, let's decide what our future should look like for the next generation. I thank you.
Thanks. I want to say that we have to continue mobilization for the world leader to respect their commitment, and is the way where we have resources to make a project and initiative to protect the dignity of people, and also continue working hard, mobilize to demystify the system of oppression and domination we are facing now. Let's continue denounce the injustice we are facing. We, as a people, we are a power, and also we request the climate justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you.